1985, almost nobody believed a tiny airline from the Middle East could compete with the giants of global aviation. At the time, the skies were dominated by household names. British Airways connected the United Kingdom to the world. Pan Am had become synonymous with international travel. Singapore Airlines was building a reputation for world-class service, while Lufthansa, Air France, and Cathay Pacific had decades of experience and fleets that stretched across continents. Dubai had none of those advantages. It wasn't a major tourist destination. It wasn't a global financial center. It didn't have a large domestic population to support an airline, and it certainly didn't have a long aviation history. In fact, during the early 1980s, Dubai's airport handled only a fraction of the passengers that moved through London's Heathrow or New York's JFK. Most people outside the Middle East couldn't even point to Dubai on a map. Launching an international airline under those circumstances seemed almost irrational. Yet 40 years later, Emirates is one of the most recognizable airlines in the world. It flies to more than 140 destinations across 6 continents, carries tens of millions of passengers every year, and has become the largest international airline on the planet. Its fleet of Airbus A380s and Boeing 777s has transformed Dubai into one of the world's busiest aviation hubs, while its premium cabins have redefined what many travelers expect from luxury in the sky. Even people who have never flown Emirates recognize its reputation. Private suites with sliding doors, onboard showers at 40,000 feet, airport lounges larger than many terminals, fine dining prepared by internationally trained chefs, a cabin crew representing well over 100 nationalities. For many travelers, Emirates doesn't simply transport passengers from one country to another. It sells an experience. But perhaps the most remarkable part of this story isn't the luxury. It's the business strategy behind it. Unlike airlines in the United States or Europe, Emirates doesn't rely on a large domestic market. It doesn't have millions of local passengers flying between cities within the same country. Almost every customer boards an Emirates aircraft because they're traveling internationally, often connecting through Dubai on journeys that span thousands of kilometers. That makes its success even more extraordinary. Most airlines spend decades building domestic networks before expanding globally. Emirates skipped that step entirely. Instead, it turned geography into its greatest competitive advantage. Dubai sits almost exactly between Europe, Asia, and Africa, placing nearly 2/3 of the world's population within an 8-hour flight. Rather than seeing the city's location as a limitation, Emirates transformed it into the center of one of the largest global connecting networks ever created. But location alone doesn't explain how a brand becomes iconic. Many airlines fly similar routes. Many offer comfortable seats. Many invest in premium cabins. Very few become symbols of luxury recognized across the world. That transformation was no accident. From the very beginning, Emirates understood something most airlines overlooked. Passengers rarely remember the technical details of an aircraft. They remember how the airline made them feel. That philosophy influenced every decision the company made. Instead of competing only on ticket prices, Emirates invested heavily in customer experience. It introduced products that captured global attention, launched advertising campaigns featuring Hollywood celebrities and international sporting events, and built a brand associated not just with travel, but with aspiration. At the same time, the airline quietly perfected the economics behind the glamour. While competitors operated fragmented fleets, Emirates focused on just a handful of aircraft types, reducing maintenance costs and simplifying crew training. While legacy airlines relied on aging infrastructure, Emirates expanded alongside one of the world's newest airports. And while others fought for passengers within crowded domestic markets, Emirates positioned itself as the airline connecting the entire world through a single hub. The result was one of the most remarkable business success stories in modern aviation. An airline that many experts believed would never survive became the benchmark against which luxury carriers are measured today. This is the story of how Emirates transformed a bold idea into the world's most luxurious airline, and in doing so, changed global aviation forever. Chapter 1. Dubai's Impossible Airline Dream. In the early 1980s, Dubai was a city with enormous ambition but very little global influence. The skyline that millions recognize today didn't exist. There was no Burj Khalifa piercing the clouds, no Palm Jumeirah stretching into the Persian Gulf, and no sprawling financial district filled with multinational corporations. Dubai was still heavily dependent on trade and a declining supply of oil, and its leaders understood something that would shape the city's future forever. Oil alone would never guarantee long-term prosperity. Unlike neighboring Abu Dhabi, Dubai's oil reserves were relatively limited. Sheikh Rashid bin Saeed Al Maktoum had already begun investing heavily in ports, roads, and infrastructure during the 1970s because he believed the city's future depended on becoming a global trading hub rather than an oil economy. One of his boldest investments was Dubai International Airport. At the time, many questioned why such a small city needed an airport capable of handling far more traffic than it currently served. Years later, that decision would prove visionary. During the early 1980s, however, Dubai faced a growing problem. International airlines controlled access to the city, and many of them prioritized larger regional markets. Gulf Air, jointly owned by several Gulf states, dominated much of the region's aviation industry. As Dubai's economy expanded, local officials became increasingly frustrated by the airline's unwillingness to provide the frequency and routes the city believed it needed. Dubai's leaders realized something important. If they wanted complete control over their future as an international destination, they couldn't depend on another country's airline. They would have to build one themselves. The idea sounded almost impossible. Starting an airline is one of the most expensive businesses in the world. Aircraft cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Pilots, engineers, maintenance crews, and airport infrastructure require enormous investment long before the first ticket is ever sold. Even established airlines frequently struggle to make consistent profits, and history is filled with carriers that disappeared after only a few years. Dubai had no aviation legacy, no globally recognized airline, and no guarantee that international passengers would choose to fly through a city that most travelers barely knew. Yet in 1985, the government approved the creation of Emirates. The startup budget was remarkably modest by aviation standards, just $10 million. More importantly, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum gave the new airline a clear instruction that would define its culture for decades. Operate like a business, not like a government project. If Emirates couldn't compete on its own merits, it wouldn't survive simply because it was state-owned. That philosophy immediately separated Emirates from many national airlines around the world. While numerous government-backed carriers relied on continuous financial support, Emirates was expected to build a sustainable business capable of competing with some of the largest airlines on Earth. To lead this ambitious project, Dubai turned to Maurice Flanagan, an experienced aviation executive who had previously worked in the region. Together with a small team of industry professionals, Flanagan faced the enormous challenge of building an international airline almost from scratch. The company's first fleet reflected those humble beginnings. Emirates began operations with just 2 leased aircraft, an Airbus A300 and a Boeing 737. Compared to the hundreds of airplanes operated by established international airlines, the fleet looked insignificant. The first scheduled flight departed Dubai on October 25, 1985, bound for Karachi, Pakistan. Few people paid much attention. From the outside, Emirates appeared to be just another small regional airline entering an already crowded market. But inside the company, the strategy was far more ambitious. Instead of focusing only on the Middle East, Emirates wanted to connect East and West through Dubai. Its leadership recognized that the city's geographic location was unlike almost anywhere else in the world. Europe lay to the northwest. Asia stretched to the east. Africa was only a few hours away. Within a single long-haul flight, billions of people could potentially reach Dubai. Rather than treating geography as a coincidence, Emirates built its entire business around it. Passengers traveling from London to Singapore could connect through Dubai. Travelers flying from Sydney to Paris could do the same. Business executives heading from Johannesburg to Mumbai suddenly had another convenient option. Instead of relying on local demand, Emirates focused on connecting the world. It was a bold strategy because it depended on convincing travelers to change long-established habits. Airlines such as British Airways, Lufthansa, Air France, and Singapore Airlines already dominated international travel. Competing against those brands would require something more than lower prices. Emirates needed to offer a better experience. From the beginning, customer service became a central part of the airline's identity. The company recruited cabin crew from around the world, invested heavily in hospitality training, and emphasized professionalism at every stage of the journey. While other airlines often treated service as a cost to manage, Emirates increasingly viewed it as a competitive advantage. Within only a few years, the airline began expanding beyond regional destinations into Europe, Asia, and Africa. Each successful route strengthened Dubai's position as a global aviation hub, attracting more airlines, more tourists, and more businesses to the city. The impossible dream was beginning to look surprisingly realistic. But Emirates' leadership knew that simply operating flights wasn't enough. If they truly wanted to compete with the world's greatest airlines, they couldn't just be another international carrier. They had to become the airline that redefined international travel itself. Chapter 2: How Emirates Turned Flying into Luxury. By the early 1990s, Emirates had proven that its business model worked. Routes were expanding, passenger numbers were growing, and Dubai was steadily becoming an important stop between Europe, Asia, and Africa. But success created a new challenge. The airline was no longer competing with small regional carriers. It was competing with some of the biggest names in global aviation: British Airways, Singapore Airlines, Cathay Pacific, Lufthansa, Air France. These companies had decades of experience, loyal customers, and international reputations that Emirates simply couldn't match. Trying to beat them on history was impossible. So Emirates decided to compete on something else: experience. At the time, most airlines viewed air travel as a transportation business. Their objective was simple: move passengers safely from one destination to another while keeping costs under control. Emirates saw a different opportunity. What if the journey itself became part of the product? Instead of asking passengers to tolerate long-haul flights, Emirates wanted them to actually enjoy them. That philosophy began influencing every decision the airline made. The company invested heavily in newer aircraft rather than keeping older planes in service for decades. While many competitors operated aging fleets with inconsistent cabin layouts, Emirates focused on modern airplanes equipped with the latest technology and passenger comforts. New aircraft not only reduced maintenance costs, but also improved fuel efficiency, reliability, and customer satisfaction. Then came one of the airline's boldest decisions. In 2000, Emirates placed an order for dozens of Airbus A380 aircraft, the largest passenger airplane ever built. It was a massive gamble. Many aviation experts questioned whether the A380 would succeed at all. The aircraft was extraordinarily expensive. Airports needed special infrastructure to accommodate it, and filling more than 500 seats on every flight seemed incredibly difficult. Most airlines purchased only small numbers of the aircraft. Emirates did the opposite. It became the A380's biggest customer. For Emirates, the aircraft represented far more than additional capacity. It became the perfect stage for redefining luxury in commercial aviation. The airline introduced private first-class suites with fully enclosed sliding doors, giving passengers a level of privacy previously associated more with private jets than commercial airlines. Fine leather seating, personal minibars, and large entertainment screens transformed first class into something closer to a five-star hotel room than an airline seat. Then Emirates introduced something the aviation industry had never seen before: an onboard shower spa. For the first time, passengers could take a hot shower while flying more than 40,000 feet above the ground. The engineering behind the concept was extraordinary. Water usage had to be carefully controlled, weight had to be minimized, and safety standards remained uncompromising. Yet the feature immediately became one of the airline's defining symbols. Even people who had never flown Emirates knew about the showers. Business class received similar attention. Instead of simply offering larger seats, Emirates created an entirely different environment. Fully flat beds allowed passengers to sleep comfortably during long-haul flights, while direct aisle access, premium dining, and extensive entertainment options blurred the line between air travel and luxury hospitality. Perhaps the most famous feature of all was the onboard lounge. Located at the rear of the upper deck on the A380, the lounge allowed first and business class passengers to leave their seats, order premium drinks, enjoy gourmet snacks, and socialize during flights. Large windows offered spectacular views while bartenders prepared cocktails in surroundings that resembled an upscale hotel bar rather than the interior of an aircraft. It wasn't simply practical, it was unforgettable. Entertainment became another major advantage. Emirates introduced its ICE system, short for Information, Communication, and Entertainment, which quickly became one of the highest-rated in-flight entertainment platforms in aviation. Thousands of movies, television shows, music albums, podcasts, games, and live news channels gave passengers more content than many people consumed at home. While competitors often treated entertainment as an optional feature, Emirates made it central to the travel experience. But perhaps the airline's greatest investment wasn't in aircraft, it was in people. Cabin crew were recruited from more than 160 nationalities, reflecting the global nature of the airline itself. Extensive training emphasized hospitality, cultural awareness, safety, and professionalism. Passengers flying between almost any two countries could often find crew members who spoke their language, understood their culture, and anticipated their needs. That diversity became one of Emirates' defining characteristics. The airline wasn't trying to feel Middle Eastern, it was trying to feel international. It transformed flying from a necessity into an aspiration. People no longer chose Emirates simply because it offered convenient schedules. They chose it because they wanted to experience Emirates itself, and that reputation would soon become one of the most valuable assets in global aviation, allowing the airline to build a luxury brand recognized almost everywhere in the world. Chapter 3: The Business Strategy That Changed Aviation. By the early 2000s, Emirates had become one of the fastest-growing airlines in the world. Its reputation for luxury was attracting passengers from every continent. Its fleet was expanding rapidly, and Dubai was beginning to establish itself as one of the busiest airports on the planet. But behind the glamorous first-class suites, onboard showers, and award-winning service was a business model that completely challenged the traditional airline industry. Most airlines grow around their home country. Emirates never had that option. Unlike airlines such as American Airlines, Delta, United, British Airways, or Air France, Emirates couldn't rely on millions of domestic travelers filling aircraft every day. The United Arab Emirates has a relatively small population, and Dubai itself could never generate enough local demand to support one of the world's largest airlines. So Emirates asked a completely different question. Instead of asking how to connect cities within one country, it asked how to connect the entire world through one city. That idea became known as the hub-and-spoke model, but Emirates executed it more effectively than almost anyone else. Dubai sits at one of the most strategically important locations on Earth. Nearly two-thirds of the world's population lives within an 8-hour flight of the city. Europe lies to the northwest, Asia to the east, Africa to the southwest, and Australia is reachable through long-haul connections. Rather than treating Dubai as a destination, Emirates turned it into a crossroads. A passenger flying from Manchester to Bangkok could connect through Dubai. Someone traveling from Johannesburg to Tokyo could do exactly the same. A family flying from Sydney to Rome could complete the journey with just one stop. Every new destination strengthened the network because each additional route created hundreds of new possible connections. The larger the network became, the more valuable it became. This network effect gave Emirates a tremendous competitive advantage. Instead of depending on local passengers, the airline built its business around international transit travelers. Today, a significant percentage of Emirates passengers begin their journey in one country and end it in another, with Dubai serving as the bridge between them. That strategy allowed the airline to serve markets that many competitors ignored. While traditional carriers focused heavily on North America and Europe, Emirates aggressively expanded into Africa, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and emerging economies. Long before many Western airlines recognized the potential of these markets, Emirates was already building relationships, increasing frequencies, and establishing brand loyalty. Another major advantage came from fleet simplicity. Many global airlines operate dozens of different aircraft models, each requiring different pilot training, maintenance procedures, spare parts inventories, and engineering expertise. While this offers flexibility, it also creates enormous complexity and higher operating costs. Emirates deliberately chose a different path. For years, the backbone of its long-haul operation consisted almost entirely of two aircraft families, the Boeing 777 and the Airbus A380. At first glance, limiting fleet diversity seemed risky, but operationally, it was incredibly efficient. Pilots required fewer aircraft certifications. Engineers specialized in fewer systems. Spare parts could be standardized. Maintenance became more predictable, and scheduling aircraft across the network became significantly easier. The result was lower long-term operating costs, despite offering one of the world's most luxurious onboard experiences. The airline also maintained one of the youngest fleets in commercial aviation. Instead of flying aircraft for 30 years or more, Emirates regularly introduced newer models equipped with improved fuel efficiency, quieter cabins, and the latest passenger technology. Although purchasing new aircraft required enormous investment, lower maintenance costs and greater operational reliability often offset much of that expense over time. Then there was the question of scale. Throughout its history, Emirates has placed some of the largest aircraft orders the aviation industry has ever seen. These multi-billion-dollar agreements didn't simply expand the fleet. They gave Emirates enormous negotiating power with manufacturers like Airbus and Boeing. Large orders often resulted in favorable pricing, priority delivery schedules, and closer collaboration during aircraft development. Few airlines possessed enough purchasing power to negotiate at the same level. Marketing followed the same ambitious philosophy. Rather than relying solely on television commercials, Emirates invested in global visibility. Its logo appeared on the shirts of some of the world's biggest football clubs, including Arsenal, Real Madrid, AC Milan, Paris Saint-Germain, Benfica, and previously Chelsea. The airline sponsored major tournaments in tennis, golf, cricket, rugby, horse racing, Formula One, and countless international events. Perhaps no sponsorship was more recognizable than the Emirates name displayed inside stadiums themselves. The Emirates Stadium in London became home to Arsenal Football Club. The airline's branding appeared during FIFA tournaments, Grand Slam tennis events, and some of the most watched sporting competitions on Earth. These partnerships accomplished something traditional advertising rarely achieves. They associated Emirates with excellence. Whether fans were watching football, tennis, Formula One, or international cricket, the airline consistently appeared alongside elite global competition. Over time, the Emirates brand became familiar even to people who had never stepped aboard one of its aircraft. Then came one of the greatest challenges in aviation history, the COVID-19 pandemic. Almost overnight, international travel collapsed, borders closed, aircraft were grounded, passenger numbers fell to levels the industry had never experienced before. Airlines around the world reported billions of dollars in losses, while many smaller carriers disappeared entirely. For an airline built almost entirely around international travel, the situation looked catastrophic. Yet Emirates survived. The airline rapidly shifted part of its operation toward cargo flights, transporting medical supplies, vaccines, and essential goods across the globe, while passenger demand remained weak. As international travel gradually returned, Emirates was able to restore routes faster than many competitors because its global network and operational infrastructure were already in place. The crisis demonstrated something important. Luxury may have made Emirates famous, but disciplined business strategy is what made it resilient. Behind every first-class suite, every premium lounge, and every iconic A380 was a company making calculated decisions about efficiency, scale, logistics, and long-term growth. That combination of operational excellence and world-class customer experience transformed Emirates from an ambitious startup into one of the most profitable and influential airlines in modern aviation. And it also raised an important question. After reaching the top of the industry, how do you stay there? When Emirates launched its first flight in 1985, few people believed it would survive. The airline had only 2 leased aircraft, a modest budget, and almost no international recognition. It wasn't backed by a large domestic market like the major American airlines, nor did it have decades of aviation history like many of Europe's flag carriers. On paper, there was very little to suggest that this small airline from Dubai would one day become one of the most respected names in global aviation. Yet Emirates achieved something extraordinary. It didn't just build an airline. It helped transform an entire city into one of the world's most important transportation hubs. Today, millions of passengers pass through Dubai every year because Emirates made it possible. Hotels, tourism, finance, real estate, retail, and countless other industries have benefited from the airline's success. In many ways, the story of Emirates and the story of modern Dubai are impossible to separate. As one grew, so did the other, creating a partnership that reshaped both the city and global aviation. Perhaps the company's greatest achievement wasn't introducing private suites or onboard showers, impressive as those innovations were. It was changing what passengers expected from air travel. Before Emirates, luxury was often reserved for a handful of elite airlines serving limited routes. Emirates proved that a global airline could combine operational efficiency with world-class hospitality on an enormous scale. It showed that passengers were willing to choose an airline not simply because it offered the fastest route or the cheapest ticket, but because it delivered an experience they genuinely looked forward to. Behind that success was a remarkably disciplined business strategy. Emirates understood the value of geography, turning Dubai into the world's crossroads. It simplified its fleet to improve efficiency, invested in young aircraft to reduce long-term costs, built one of the strongest global brands in aviation through strategic sponsorships, and never stopped investing in customer experience. While many airlines viewed service as an expense, Emirates treated it as one of its greatest competitive advantages. The airline's journey has not been without challenges. Economic recessions, regional instability, rising fuel prices, intense competition, and the COVID-19 pandemic tested the resilience of the business in ways few companies could have anticipated. Yet each time, Emirates adapted. It expanded into new markets, modernized its operations, embraced new technology, and continued preparing for the future instead of simply protecting the past. That willingness to evolve has become one of the defining characteristics of the company. Looking ahead, the aviation industry will continue changing. Sustainable fuels, artificial intelligence, next-generation aircraft, and shifting passenger expectations will reshape how people travel over the coming decades. Competition will become even more intense as airlines across the world invest in premium experiences and digital innovation. Remaining the world's most luxurious airline will require Emirates to continue reinventing itself while preserving the standards that built its reputation in the first place. But if history has proven anything, it is that Emirates has never been afraid of ambitious goals. It was founded by people who believed a small city with limited resources could compete against the biggest names in global aviation and win. That same ambition transformed Dubai into one of the busiest international airports in the world, built one of the largest fleets of long-haul aircraft ever assembled, and created a brand recognized in almost every country on Earth. That is why, Nearly 4 decades after its first flight, Emirates isn't simply one of the world's largest airlines. It has become one of the defining symbols of modern aviation itself.